Hey everyone, thanks for tuning back into Test Tube Plus. This is episode 4 of 5 on alcohol. We've talked about why we drink it. We've talked about the evolution of alcohol in the human body. We've even talked about prohibition and how some people will get it no matter what. But today we're going to talk about the fringes of alcoholic culture, how humans tend to take alcohol to the extreme. Make sure you subscribe so you get all of our videos. Just saying. The weirdest one, I think, on this whole list, we're just going to kick it right off, prison wine. Prison wine, you guys. This is a thing. Prison wine's common ingredients are fruit, syrup, ketchup, bread, and sugar, plus thyme, not the spice or the herb. Thyme like TikTok. It's left in a bag, hidden in a toilet, so it can ferment and turn into alcohol. And this sounds like the worst idea ever, but this is just, how humans are willing to go to the extremes to get alcohol. It tastes awful, allegedly. I have not had it, but it tastes awful. Supposedly it tastes like, quote, in my notes here, sugared vomit. Yum. There is one huge negative, aside from the fact that you're drinking something that was made in a toilet and came out of a bag in a prison. There is another negative to this, botulism. You can get botulism from drinking prison wine, also called, by the way, prison hooch or pruno. Botulism is a life-threatening toxin, and it can cause paralysis. It's bad, although it is the basic ingredient of Botox, which also causes, micro-paralysis. That's a whole other thing, though. There's moonshine. Moonshine is another extreme, and it's a more traditional one, and that's a high-proof alcohol, essentially, and they distill it traditionally out away from the public. The reason being, most moonshine is illegal to make. We have a show about this on our parent company's network. I've seen it. It's okay. It's a pretty good show. But the problem with moonshine is it can actually kill people if you're not being sterile enough, or if you brew it or distill it rather wrong. And it was one of the drinks of choice during Prohibition because it was high alcohol content and it could be smuggled fairly easily and made at home. There's also space alcohol. I know that sounds weird, but there is alcohol in space. The Russians have vodka in space, but NASA has a no alcohol policy. No alkies in the spaceys. Not happening. But that wasn't always the case. In the 1970s, they planned to send sherry to the Skylab space station, but they were testing this because it's NASA. Of course they were. They had to test it first, and they test it using the Vomit Comet, which if you're not familiar with the Vomit Comet, it's a large airplane that flies in a parabolic trajectory. So it'll go up and then it'll drop precipitously, and that gives the people inside the illusion of microgravity similar to space. So they would test the wine sherry in the Vomit Comet, and the wine added to the effects of nausea experienced by the people in the Vomit Comet. So they decided that might not be great. But the real reason that they don't send it up there is because astronauts, it's weird to say, but astronauts shouldn't get drunk, right? That's basically what people feel like. Astronauts are this symbol for American pride, and NASA received angry letters from the public saying booze should not go to space. Scientist astronaut Edward G. Gibson, who flew on the third Skylab mission, he put it like this, quote, "We astronauts kind of represent a form of purity. As soon as you taint that purity with alcohol, people get really upset." That makes sense. When you think of astronauts, you don't want to think of Buzz Aldrin out there on the moon having a lonely party with Neil. You want to think of them doing really great work and being out there for altruistic reasons. It might suck for the guys and gals who are sitting in space for a long time, but you know what? That's too bad. They can just ask the Russians. Maybe be like, "What's up, buddy? Got you some vodka?" In August of 2014, a Japanese company, Suntory Global Innovation Center, sent various types of distilled liquor to space, but it wasn't for drinking. This is super interesting. They were trying to figure out why booze mellows with age. So they're going to retrieve the liquor 2 years from now, and then they're going to study it, and they're going to compare that to samples that were on Earth and see what happens, see if it's different when it's up in space. That's kind of cool, right? But when it comes to space age stuff, a lot of times people think of changing some, think of space age alcohol. You probably don't think of it as a glass of whiskey with with an ice cube in it. You probably think of it as some advanced technology or something, and that's where Palcohol comes in. I'm not saying Palcohol is advanced technology, but this is a way that we've taken alcohol, a thing that was perfectly good already, and turned it into something else. Palcohol is a powdered alcohol. You mix it with, cola or juice or even just water, and each pouch of powder is equal to 1 shot. The powder is essentially a distilled vodka or rum, and then they put it through a process that turns it into an alcohol. It binds with these little powdered crystals. And that can be used to smuggle booze into places that you probably shouldn't. Hopefully not space. Astronauts, don't smuggle this into space. People don't like that. But you could get it into, say, a concert or a festival or something. And that's kind of part of the idea of this stuff. It's a way to transport alcohol simply without having to make it into a liquid bottle of some kind. You can also breathe alcohol. This is another futuristic feeling thing. I mean, inhaling the vapors of alcohol would get you drunk. They vaporize it and then they put it in this room. It's actually done in a bar in London. We talked about it over on D News if you want to know more about it. But none of the alcohol is then metabolized by the stomach. You actually absorb it through your skin, you breathe it in and absorb it through your lungs, and you absorb it through your eyeballs. Yep, your eyeballs. It's weird. It's quicker, it's more concentrated, and it gets you intoxicated very quickly. At that bar that I mentioned, they actually make patrons wear ponchos so they don't absorb too much alcohol too quickly. The problem being, that bypasses the stomach and the liver in the digestive system, and it just goes right through the skin into the bloodstream. And that process bypasses our damage control systems. The liver helps metabolize and break down the alcohol, and without that process, it can get pretty dangerous. So vaping alcohol is more dangerous in some ways because you don't feel the effects of alcohol poisoning as easily. You don't, feel sick, and you don't get that vomity feeling because of the way it's absorbed. It's not being processed in the same way by the body. But since we bring that up, that's how your body tells you you should stop drinking. Because alcohol is essentially a poison. You are poisoning your body. And you can get damage permanently from doing so. So your body tells you, I'm full, I feel sick, please stop. And if you don't, then it makes you take that alcohol and rapidly ejects it from your body. It happens. And when people think of that, they usually think of binge drinking, right? But binge drinking is actually way less than that. There's something called the 5-4 limit. It's what constitutes binge drinking. And that means if a man consumes more than 5 drinks or a woman more than 4 over a 2-hour period, then he or she is officially binge drinking. Binge drinking is not that much alcohol. 2 drinks in an hour for women, 2.5 for men. And binge drinking may seem oh, binge drinking, whatever. It kills 6 Americans every day. Binge drinking. Clinical psychologist Dr. Michael Mantell says that any type of binging are ways of dealing with negative emotions that are not rational or healthy. And for the record, once someone feels a need to binge drink in private or schedule binges around or instead of work and social obligations, if you have a friend who's doing that, you might want to encourage them to seek help. This is a serious issue. Drinking is addicting. Drinking is damaging. Drinking is poisonous. And yeah, we're kind of making jokes and trying to make light of alcohol and alcohol culture, but some people handle it differently. And we don't always understand why that is, but it can happen. A study shows that roughly 65% of college students aged 18 to 22 in general drink alcohol in any given month. And according to another study from Harvard, 7 out of 10 students are consuming 5 or more drinks in a row, which means they could be putting themselves in that binge drinking range. And if that continues throughout college and then after college and then throughout their lives, that can be an indicator for some pretty negative stuff. That being said, not to end on a negative, binge drinking is serious, but you can drink and not have serious effects and not become addicted to it. It doesn't work like that. Drinking can be part of a normal everyday experience, and then usually after that, you're going to get a hangover. That's your body's way of telling you, this didn't go as well as I'd planned. But for more on that, you should come back tomorrow. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your first drinking experience? Or if you don't drink, tell us why down in the comments. Subscribe for more Test Tube Plus as well, so you can come back tomorrow and check that out. And make sure you watch our earlier episodes this week about alcohol. There's a lot in there, And thanks so much for watching Test Tube Plus. I really do appreciate it. I'm Trace, and I will see you tomorrow.